Hello everybody and welcome to the third React Native Show episode. Today we will be talking about React Native Paper, a UI library for building React Native apps with material design. And today with me is a very special guest, David, that works with me at ColdStack, and he is actually a lead engineer on React Native Paper, and he actually leads the entire project. So we have the best person to talk about React Native Paper today. So, David, not nice to meet you because we already know each other from ColdStack, but what I wanted to say is that we actually know each other pretty well for a few years already. But for those of our listeners that are here for the first time, how about you just introduce yourself, in a couple of sentences?
Yeah, sure. So hello, I'm David. I work at ColdStack as a software developer. On a daily basis, I develop React Native and React Web applications. You can also know me from open source, where I maintain React Native Paper library. And my journey with React Native started 3 years ago or so. And that's how I ended up writing React.
Cool. That's awesome. So, I'm just curious because, since you work at ColdStack, and I happen to know how ColdStack works in a sense that we do, client work during the day. I'm just curious, how do you find time to, do the React Native Paper work and other open source stuff that you're already, that you are involved in anyway?
Finding a time for open source is sometimes very hard, especially when your client project is very demanding and you need to spend 8 hours every day on it. And hopefully I'm allowed to spend some of my working hours on contributing to open source. Of course, it happens that from time to time I do it outside of my working hours, but I try not to do it very often just to keep the work-life balance.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, I'm just curious because if you don't have that much time, then, what made you choose React Native Paper specifically? Is there anything that, excites you about UI layers or something that, made you, be like, this is what I want to do?
Actually, there is a story behind why I choose React Native Paper. So when I started my journey with open source and specifically React Native, I was looking for a new position, and I was looking for a position as a React Native developer, and I applied for a position at ColdStack. And additionally I decided I'm gonna contribute to their open source project to just get their attention and increase my chances of being hired.
Yeah,
and that's how I ended up contributing to React Native Paper.
Nice. So, since we are here talking to each other and you're working at ColdStack, we can say that this hack certainly works. So if there is anybody listening to us who's like, should I apply to ColdStack? Contribute to React Native Paper, that will increase your chances. So since we already talked about React Native Paper quite a bit, and it seems that it's really exciting and great project, how about, David, you just tell us what it actually is? I know it's a UI library and everybody can probably read it by checking the GitHub repo, but, if you were to give like an elevator pitch about React Native Paper, what it would be?
React Native Paper is a cross-platform UI component library that implements material designs in a very strict way. It works on iOS, Android, and web, thanks to React Native Web project. And the library provides high-quality, standard-compliant components, building blocks for creating whole user interfaces out of it. Mm-hmm. And if I had to give an elevator pitch, I would try to explain the benefits of component library. I think component library is good not only for small projects, but also for big companies where there are different teams working on the same code base, same application at the same time. Because with component library, you can keep the consistency in both design and code.
Yeah, that makes a total sense. And you mentioned a couple of times that React Native paper is material design compliant. So is this the thing that makes it stand from the other UI libraries, or like what are like the differences from other libraries similar to paper in the market? Because I know there are a few, and there's always this question like, okay, so which one I'm gonna choose? So like, what should I know about paper to make my decision to use it?
So yeah, there are quite a lot of UI component libraries on the market specifically for React Native. And most of them don't follow any popular design guidelines. They implement their own idea, their own guidelines. And yeah, React Native paper is different in this case because we try to follow design guidelines very strictly. And that's the biggest difference between these libraries. And just adding to that, I don't think it's a bad thing that these other libraries don't follow any popular design guidelines, because each approach has its own trade-offs. And yeah, for example, native base and React Native elements, which are really cool libraries, I'm pretty sure they can be customized in an easier way than React Native paper is. But on the other hand, React Native paper is like written in the same style. All the components looks similar. I mean, they follow the same design patterns. So when you build the whole user interface out of paper components, you know that it's gonna look really good.
Yeah, and I think personally that is a very great thing, and we will get back to it in a second when I would like to ask you about customizing paper. But before we go there, I quickly wanted to touch base on this material design support. So you said a couple of times, and obviously to everybody listening to us, I think it's obvious that React Native paper is the library that implements the whole material design very strictly. So my question is, how did you approach things such as animations or gestures to make it native-like? Because maybe a bit more context to this question. React Native obviously has those animations and stuff written in JavaScript, and just like we used to have issues with navigation where it didn't look native-like because it had animations re-implemented. This is the third thing that comes to my mind in terms of paper. So I mean, how did you approach that? Did you even have this kind of a problem, and if yes, how did you manage to solve it?
So when the first version of React Native paper was implemented, only the animated library from React Native Core was available. Okay. And that's why all of the animations are implemented with this library. But of course, it doesn't mean they are slow or anything like that, because most of them, I mean, all maybe except one or two, runs on the native thread. So the performance is good, the animations are smooth. And yeah, I remember we were considering migrating to React Native Reanimated library when the first version was released, because it was very popular. A lot of people, a lot of developers adopted it very quickly, and we thought that maybe it's a good way of doing animations. But overall, we dropped this idea because anyway, our animations runs on a native thread, so there wouldn't be any significant performance improvements.
Yeah, yeah, I see. I see. That makes a lot of sense. Now, so since you had to, write these animations with animated library, you kind of like this is I guess what really makes me wondering. Like, did you have to reverse engineer the animation and just try to guess the values in animated to make it look like material design, or is there a Google owned specification that says this is how the animation should look like? Is there any info like that, or is it reverse engineering? How does it look like?
So there is a material design website which contains a lot of useful information, and yeah, there is also information about specification of the animations, but not unfortunately not for every component. So for few of them, we had to do some reverse engineering, and I know that some of the animations are based on how things are implemented in the native Android implementation of material design.
Okay, cool. I see. So at least you have some of the data available. So it's not that you have to reverse engineer everything. But anyway, I guess respect for you, to you and the whole team for doing that, and probably the community already. I mean, probably the community appreciates that as well, since they are using paper. And now that I mentioned it. David, I know that you were bragging about the numbers. I mean, I'm just kidding. You were not, but I know you know the numbers. So just curious, how many people actually downloaded paper, like monthly or yearly? I know you have some kind of data available.
Yes. So I might be wrong, slightly, because the numbers are changing like every day.
Yeah.
But we have more than 200, like about 200,000 monthly downloads.
Wow.
And yeah, in this past year, more than 2 million of downloads. There have been more than 2 million of downloads. So I think that's a good, really good result.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we are currently like the second most popular UI component library for React Native. And yeah, the first one is React Native Elements. And yeah, we are trying to get to their level, but yeah, probably it's gonna take some time for us.
Well, this podcast is probably the first step to do it. A couple more like that, and I'm pretty sure that we will bypass them anyway. But yeah, congrats, David, on that, because I didn't know that you were the second most popular UI kit. I knew the number, but I didn't know that you are, that high. So, really happy that, you made this possible and happen. So let's go back to, the animations for a while as well. So you said that, you started with animated, and you didn't really see a lot of benefits going React native, Reanimated Path, yeah, which makes sense to me. So do you see any opportunities from the upcoming re-architecture of React Native from, let's say, performance standpoint, or anything that makes you excited and you're like, this is what I'll be using in paper as soon as it's stable? Is there anything like that?
So I'm really excited about this new re-architecture, about Turbo modules and Fabric. I think it will open a lot of new possibilities, especially the Turbo modules. I think they will not only improve the performance of our applications, but they will also allow us to build better, component APIs. And I think we can already notice that the new version of React Native Reanimated, the version 2, which is not yet stable, but it's in release candidate version, it's written with Turbo modules under the hood. And if we compare it to the previous version, to the version 1, the API is improved a lot. Like it's much more simpler, and it's imperative. And I think more developers will start using this library because of this change. So yeah, I agree that the Turbo modules and Fabric will open up a lot of new possibilities.
Nice. So, since 064 RC1 has been just released, I mean, I don't know when we will publish this podcast, so this might be a few days ago or months ago, but that's probably something that you might want to try with Paper at some point. And in case it breaks, I'm here to help with any of the issues. Cool. Okay, so that's great. So I feel like we have the performance part, the animations part wrapped up, so we can move on to some easier questions. And the one that I have in mind is related to what you said before. Paper is, taking material design very seriously, and you kind of support it very strictly. And the question that comes to my mind is, like, is Paper all or nothing UI library in a sense that I have to use it very strictly, or does it actually let me adjust it to my needs? And the reason I'm asking is, very simple. Designers often make their choices, and sometimes it's not even possible to change it. So I would love to use Paper, but what if my paddings are different, or what if my border color is different? Is there is Paper sort of okay with these sort of changes, or not? How does it look like?
Yeah, so the Paper from the ground up was designed to be very strict and to follow the design, material design. But of course, we support customization and adjusting components to user needs. So yes, all these things are possible with Paper, and we support two ways of doing it. We allow like one solution is called theming, and the second is a style prop. And theming, user is able to pass their own custom theme with different colors, with different fonts, and even with different, for example, animation durations. And it will affect all components provided by Paper. So this way of adjusting components' appearance and behavior is suitable if you want to change every component. And for cases where you want to make some little change in one component, then the second way of doing it, there's a second way of doing it, a style prop. So users are able to pass any React Native style property, and it will be passed down to the underlying view element or text element or image element. And yeah, theoretically you're like able to change everything in the component. Of course, there are some rough edge cases where you can accomplish something, but most of the things should be possible.
Yeah, and that's really great. And since you already mentioned these edge cases, I didn't really wanted to ask you because there are harder questions and easier questions. But since you said since you already mentioned edge cases, then I can ask you about the edge cases. I've noticed the other day looking at Paper GitHub repos that some of the components, or let's say pieces of React Native Paper are split into different modules, like the theming stuff. So like if I wanted to use some kind of UI kit in my app, because I really love the idea of UI library, UI component library, but I just couldn't use Paper because of material design. Would it be possible to use these sub modules of Paper to build something that is my truly own, or not?
Yeah, the answer is yes, and yeah, the best way to use just part of the library of React Native Paper is to just simply install it as a dependency in your project and use it in a normal way. But we also provide a Babel plugin that its purpose is to rewrite the imports so Metro Bundler don't end up requiring components that you don't use, and it will basically remove all the not used components from the bundle. And yeah, that's the way, like the preferred way. But of course, some companies and some developers build on top of paper, like their own libraries on top of paper, where they customize things, and sometimes they fork the library completely and remove some parts of it, just because they like how our repository is set, and how the example app works. So they fork it, remove the stuff they don't need, and just they have ready to use library, and they can modify it to their needs.
Yeah, so it's like paper is also a boilerplate for some of these projects, right? Yeah. Cool. So because you, David, said that some developers strip it, or there is this Babel plugin that removes certain pieces that you don't use. What are actually the pieces inside paper that make paper what it is? And I'm specifically asking about APIs, because I know this is pretty obvious that a UI component library has components, like it has button and whatever else there is required, but sometimes there are also APIs for doing certain actions. So does paper have any of these APIs available? And if yes, maybe just a teaser of what kind of APIs you have?
So if it comes to APIs, we don't really have them. We try to, we prefer doing things
declaratively.
Declaratively with the components. So that's how most of the library works. But of course, we have some APIs that we expose as functions, for example, for generating consistent shadows on all platforms. Because it's different on Android, iOS, and web, and yeah, people can use this helper function that is exported from paper. But yeah, if it comes to the API, there are not so many. And
okay, cool. I like that approach as well. I was just curious, but that makes a lot of sense. Cool. Okay, so. Moving on, I know that you have recently shipped a major upgrade. Actually, when I'm browsing my Twitter, I see you posting a new release every once in a while. So you are certainly very busy with shipping features and fixes. And you recently. So let's start with the first one that is about Material Design 2.0. Can you tell me more about it? Like, what does it really mean to support Material Design 2.0? Because it sounds very fancy.
So Material Design 2.0 was announced at Google I/O conference in 2018. React Native Paper Library was in version 1.x back in that day. And yeah, the Google team announced a couple of new components, but yeah, most of the biggest changes were on the existing components. So what we had to do we had to adjust existing components and yeah, basically release a new major version, because these were breaking changes in most of the times.
Okay, and so that sounds like something I'd say very challenging and certainly not easy. Hopefully fun, but updating things like core ain't never easy stuff, right? It's always possible to break something. I mean, it's more than certain that there will be a regression at some point. What are your takeaways from this upgrade that you find really important? And if you were to recommend somebody, this is what you have to keep in mind if you are doing something like that, what would it be?
So yeah, first of all, I would like to mention that if it comes to like public libraries, it's always easy to add new things, but it's very hard to remove things that already exist, because it's a breaking change. You need to release new major version, and it's then hard for your users to upgrade to that new version. And I think we followed a pattern that worked for us in a different libraries previously. So we created another branch where we were adjusting components, and we kept the updated ones. And once we were happy with its state, and we knew that everything works properly and looks good, we released a new version. And of course, we also provided a migration guide for users, just to ease the process of upgrading.
Cool. So looks like if I'm an enterprise looking for a stable UI kit that will take care of me every time there is a breaking change, this is my library to go. Nice. Cool. And so Material Design 2.0. Wow, that is a big thing. I'm just curious, like, because I have no idea about Android ecosystem. Like, is it like, how often Google changes Material Design or adds new features? Is it every major release, like with Apple, iOS 12 changes everything, or how does it look like? What is the life cycle of it?
So apart from that big announcement, the team behind Material Design releases some small changes, some small adjustments, like maybe every month, every 2 months, there is some small update. So yeah, we basically need to observe the website, keep track of those changes, and because we need to make sure that we are always up to date, and that our components stay compliant with the guidelines.
Yeah, that makes a total sense. And then it's just a matter of upgrading to the latest paper, or is it like a different theme? I can say Material Design 1.0 theme 1.5, or upgrade and get the latest. Otherwise, if you want old look, don't upgrade.
So it's the second option. So
okay.
Once user wants to have the latest designs, the latest guidelines, follow the latest guidelines, then he needs to upgrade paper to the version.
Okay, cool, awesome. So in terms of the other changes that you are working on and releasing, since you said that it doesn't happen quite often that Google changes Material Design spec that much. My question is, are you just waiting for them to change everything, or you have your backlog of like small features and fixes that you're working on? And if yes, what is it like? If you could make me and those that are listening excited about what's yet to come, then we, are all yours, waiting for the story.
Currently, we are. Like, our primary goal is to improve the documentation, and also make it easier to contribute to the library. Easier for like first-time contributors, newcomers to contribute, and also use the library. So we are planning to write a series of blog posts / documentation pages on integrating React Native Paper with navigation library, React Navigation specifically, and it's actually already in progress. We wrote a guide on integrating paper theming with React Navigation theming, and also we have almost ready a guide on integrating Stack Navigator and Paper's app bar. And in terms of the library itself, of the code base, we are more in a reactive mode. Of course, we ship some updates from time to time. We accept a lot of contributions from external contributors. That's really amazing that people like continuously work on improving this library.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I can reveal a small secret that currently we are working on a select component. Yeah, it was requested a lot of times. I think it was like the most requested component by the community ever. So yeah, hopefully it's gonna be ready and released.
Yay, nice. So sounds like you are focusing primarily on the growth, but still keeping an eye on, like what is it that community is, requesting, let's say.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, but was the select component actually part of the material design spec, or did they just want it because it was convenient?
It is part of the spec, although the spec is only for web and not for mobile.
Okay.
And we decided that we want to implement it also for Android and iOS because people want to use it. And yeah, we think it's going to be like a good addition to the library.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So just before we wrap up, one question that I realized I didn't ask you about, and I think it's one of the most important things about Paper is its cross-platformability. So the fact that you can actually use Paper to build apps for both mobile and web. So if you could maybe tell us more about that, what is the coverage? Like, is it 100% on all platforms, or like, what should I know if I'm about to write cross-platform app and I'm thinking, should I use Paper?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to start maybe with some history of Paper. So it was when it was created, there were some couple of alternative libraries with following material design, but usually they were supporting only Android, and that's why the React Native Paper was created in the first place to support both Android and iOS.
Yeah.
So yeah, then we added the web support when the React Native Web project was announced, and it was major enough, to build production apps with that. And nowadays, I'm not gonna say every component supports web, but I think like more than 95% of components supports web. And yeah, all the components should be reliable on both three platforms.
Nice. That is really exciting, and I'm personally a huge fan of cross-platformability of React Native. So it's a pleasure to me to hear that this is one of your core principles. Anyway, David, I wanted to thank you for joining us here today on this podcast. It was a pleasure to talk about React Native Paper, and of course, I will include David's Twitter handle, GitHub, and all sorts of info in the podcast description. So make sure to follow him. And obviously, David, I wanted to kind of say congrats on doing all that to you and your team, because the numbers you set and the users, it is a very, very serious stuff. People are using it, and it's crazy if you think that there is 200,000 people every month or every week downloading it to do something. It's amazing. So congratulations for achieving such a milestone. And I think from me, I wish you 1-0 more at the end, not less but more next year. And yeah, again, thank you very much for this podcast and for having this conversation with me today. And now you can't say thank you, Mike, and we will not cut it. Now you have to say something from your side as well. So there you go.
Yeah, so I also wanted to thank you for those kind words, and also for having me today. And yeah, I look forward for new episodes of React Native Show.
Nice. Yeah. So I guess, this is going to be everything about today's podcast. And once again, make sure to use React Native Paper. Try it. Let us know on Twitter what you think. And as you can see, David is very eager to work with you on whatever you need. So don't be afraid to try it and let us know what you think. So thank you, David, for today. And hopefully see you next time on a different subject.